I'm Katie.
I'm Anna.
She's a psychotherapist.
And she runs a photography empire. Together we make music and we podcast
to encourage ourselves
and you
to do the things that scare us most.
Hi everybody. Today we are interviewing the lovely Haylie Montgomery, who is a female stand-up comic. Recently we had the pleasure of going to see her set at a comedy club in Atlanta, and we're going to include a little bit of it here for you also. Haylie's hilarious, but she's also full of wisdom and insight and encouragement. There's so much value in this interview. We hope you enjoyed this clip of Haylie's stand-up and the interview that follows.
Anyways, number 2 on my resolution list was to shave my legs because I thought at a certain point the hair would stop growing, but apparently not. My leggings were starting to feel just really full. How to do that. So yes, I'm sorry. This is choking me. It's been choking me all night. Actually, I think jumpers are crippling to women everywhere. In fact, yeah, it's suffocating. You know, we went from strong, independent women to having to ask someone to undo our zipper every time we go to the bathroom. Yeah, it's embarrassing. I'm waiting for it to come back. In fact, I hate this. I'm ready for it to go out of style. But at the same time, we've never been so close to having onesies as kind of high fashion. So I kind of love it. I just wish the zipper was on the front, not the back. And I feel like guys wouldn't be opposed to that. Easier access, things like that. But at the same time, I think, in fact, that a sexist man designed the jumper. Like, maybe they were all in a boardroom meeting one day, and they're sitting there just trying to plot up ways to stop women from stealing their jobs. And so they're in this meeting, and see a guy in the back, he's raising his hand, he's like, yes, Jim, yeah, you have a solution, a plan? And Jim just like stands up and he's like, I don't know if it's gonna stop them, but it sure as hell will slow them down.
Haylie Montgomery, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to talk.
And listen.
We're going to talk at you.
I'll confirm or deny just with a head shake.
Yeah, everyone will just have to believe us that you're here just listening and absorbing everything we're saying.
That sounds perfect.
Yeah, that's good podcasting right there. For sure.
Haylie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, my name is Haylie, and I'm from Atlanta. And I grew up in Marietta. I am currently working with kids that have dyslexia, providing testing and tutoring. That's like my now 9 to 5.
Awesome.
Yes, but I also do stand-up, which is a fun thing that I do.
I stand up sometimes.
No, you don't.
I do stand up.
That's amazing. How did you get into stand-up comedy?
I have always had people laughing at me in a kind of encouraging way. But
that's good.
I've always felt encouraged by my family or friends that they thought I was funny. And so I just was like, this is the time to step out and actually have a real go with it. So yeah, I always felt empowered and encouraged to do that.
That's so cool.
As far as be funny or speak out with jokes.
What are your thoughts about being funny versus being a stand-up comic? Do you feel like you're learning a lot about that difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the difference between being silly and being funny is totally different. Because it's easy to be silly, and I don't want to be seen as silly. I want to genuinely have thought about jokes and thought about the delivery of them, and to bring them in such a way that it brings about this authentic response, people laughing, but also makes you think about the world. And I'd love for people to connect with what I'm saying and think oh, I've thought that too, or oh, that's hilarious because I've experienced that as well, or I want there to be common denominator between me and the people that I am communicating to. So that's kind of why I think comedy is tricky, because it's all about timing. It's all about delivery. It's all about thinking in advance, who is my audience and where are we at as a society, whether it's political or, just being up to date with the times and knowing kind of, this is maybe what people are thinking about today, and this is what might, provoke them to laugh or see it in a different light. So that's kind of the challenge of comedy, and also the fun part about it, because you can play on words. But I certainly don't want to come up and just be silly, because I definitely can do that. But I don't want it to be just like that was a waste of my time.
Yeah. Well, and that's it sounds like a really compelling challenge. It reminds me a little bit of what we've talked about before with photography, how it's anybody with a camera can call themselves a photographer. Anyone with a sense of humor can be oh, I'm so funny.
Yes.
But it's there is a difference, and there's a lot of art and science to it. Mm-hmm. If you're really taking it seriously, or sort of trying to do it full out. That's really cool.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What was that process like of thinking, okay, well, this is something I want to pursue, and then actually working towards the first time? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's been a long process, because I grew up in church and did Young Lives and Wildlife and did stuff with Atlanta Mission, and when I was at Hillsong, and just church all over. I feel like I was writing scripts for funny plays or funny little skits or stuff like that. So that started way in advance, that I already knew I loved just kind of doing ministry in a non-traditional way, or an unconventional way. And this is kind of an outworking of that. I always just thought, this would be so funny if we did this, or, and I just would start writing, and then I'd end up writing jokes or something like that. And I felt like it was something that came naturally to me. I think having a big family, I just always felt like the butt of a joke. So I was just constantly this would be hilarious. Next time I see him, I'm going to say this because, anyways. But I was just this is going to be fun. So when I turned 30, I was you know what? When I started with the airlines too, that's when my friends were you have to write down, because
So you were a stewardess?
Yes, I was a flight attendant.
Fun. Sorry, was that not the correct?
No, it's perfect. Okay. No, I like it all. Flight attendant, stewardess, person in the sky who serves drinks. That's about it. But I felt like I was coming home with these ridiculous stories, and my friends were like, "There's no way that really happened." I'm like, "It happened. I was accused." There's so many stories that it's insane. And my friends were like, "How was your day?" And I'd be telling them, they'd be like, "You have to write this junk down. It is too ridiculous to just I was yeah, I guess so. People are in a high stress environment, and you're just there as a punch bag." So I was just okay.
That's so true.
But so that kind of stirred up a lot of humor in my life, because I was just I have all these stories, and now I want to do something with them. Anyways, I turned 30, and I was I'm actually going to do something with them. And I went ahead, and I was reaching out to different clubs and trying to figure out who had an open mic, who allowed people to come in and have a go for the first time. And I got connected with the guy at the Laughing Skull, and I told him, I was this will be my first time, but I have a lot of jokes. I think they're funny, but who knows? I think my navel is funny, so I really don't know if anyone else will, but my family will be there paying, so at least you'll have money.
So let me in.
Yeah. And he was okay, cool, sounds great, come on. And that's kind of where it all started, is he was just sure, come have a go. And I actually signed up for it, and then I wrote a 5-minute skit.
That's
or
amazing.
5-minute bit. And I needed that pressure in order to really sit down and write it all out. And it was so much fun. Like, it was a bit stressful because I was like, I'm going to present this in front of people that don't know me or know my humor. So this genuinely has to be funny. It can't just be, my friends will laugh at me for no reason because they just know that I am a space cadet and my life is crazy and they just know me. So they'll laugh for, you know, just me being me, I feel. But to have people that don't know try to, like, you know, get them to laugh. I'm like, wow, I really have to craft how I say this, the timing of it, and then the punchline has to be strong. So how do I do that? So after I signed up, I went and I just wrote for a couple weeks. So it was really fun. Yes.
That's like...
That's so brave.
Yeah, it sounds so scary to me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I think most people would agree that stand-up is one of the scariest things. I mean, I could never imagine being that vulnerable.
Yeah.
And like you said, like having a crowd that isn't laughing to be polite.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the opposite. Maybe, you know,
yeah.
Do you ever feel that way that they're
Rooting for you to fail?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's almost the opposite. It's like they want you to not be funny so that they can be like funnier or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel that pressure, especially from the front row. I feel like people that sit in the front row have come to, like,
Judge.
get the most out of it or to judge.
Yeah.
And I do feel like one time, I think when you came, I was doing that set and the whole front row was just those guys and they just arms crossed, just like...
Who were also performing that night.
Yeah, they were also
so that's
performing
another
that
level.
night.
Yeah.
They were not laughing. They were not smiling. They're deadpan, just like dead shark eyes. I was like, these guys are not feeling it. But when you listen back to the recording, the whole back audience was dying.
Which is where we were.
We were
And
dying.
we couldn't see their faces. Like that, I think that's worth saying. Like I had no idea you would be feeling that because
I was feeling like, oh shoot, this bombed so hard.
No, everybody was loving it. We were dying laughing. I couldn't see those faces, you know?
Oh man. But yeah, that pressure, you just have to like know in and of yourself, I'm not working for this person. I'm working for the ultimate audience and maybe they're not it. Like my ultimate audience, like I try to create clean jokes because I want to go into any circle and know that this is acceptable. I want to be able to do it in front of kids and it's hard being clean because it would be so much funnier sometimes to just say certain things. But I feel like, especially when you do center down and you're like, this is ultimately what I want to do with this and this is why I want this opportunity to go this way and why I'm even pursuing this platform, then you're able to write off kind of the judgment from other people who don't get where you're trying to go or what you're trying to do ultimately. And there were so many people who come to comedy like expecting something raunchy or, you know, and they're disappointed by what you have to bring. And I just have to, I'm okay with that. Like,
yeah.
They're not your audience.
Yes, they're not my audience, and it's perfectly fine if they don't like me because at the end of the day, they don't know me and I don't know them. So it's just, yeah, being okay with yourself and having that self-confidence to just be like, I'm working towards this goal and this is like ultimately everything else is like practice.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
That totally reminds me of just like in the world of business, and we've interviewed, you know, inventors and entrepreneurs, and they say, you know, well, you're not my target customer then. Like you may or may not be my customer, but if you're not, like, that's okay. I'm gonna figure out how to find them.
Right.
And it's just the same thing. It's like, who's your audience?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It is, but it's also a very hard thing to remind yourself of. If all you're seeing is that front row of people,
Right.
it's really hard to just have that inner sense of knowing of like, somebody's going to think this is funny. You know,
Yes.
believing in yourself at that level, that's really hard.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it is too.
And opening up yourself, like I will make little voice clips and send them to key people, friends of mine that I'm like, hey, guys and girls, what do you think about this honestly? Does it sit well with you? Does it sound too much like complaining? Is it actually funny? What can I adjust? And I'm so thankful that I have key people in my life that are like, hey, like, I loved that joke. Your timing was a little off. You could slow it down. Which, when I get nervous, I talk fast.
Sure.
So that is one thing with comedy. You need to sit behind the beat and just really, like, hold out on it. And then when you come to your punchline, do the punchline and then leave space.
Yeah.
Because even if you bomb, you want to leave the space. Just so that way, and it feels dumb because you'll say your punchline and then you won't say anything, and either people are laughing or not, but at least that was my punchline, moving on.
Right.
Like,
it's like, that was the punchline, at least.
But it gives people space to laugh because I talk over people laughing, and I don't want to calm down the laughter because it just builds. You lose the momentum when you try to talk over them, and then they're like, oh no, should I be quiet? Like, you want to free up the atmosphere for them to actually, like, have a full-on laugh, and then you move on. So you, as the stand-up, you're controlling that environment and also freeing it up for people. So I have to be really mindful of that. That's one thing I'm really working on, because if I miss that, then I've missed everything else. And people will miss other jokes because, like, even when you guys came, I was like, jumping to the next one because I had so many in a 5-minute set. You're like, that's not that long, but it actually is a good amount of time for prep. But yeah, I was like jumping to the next punchline, and I was like, oh, they missed that because I talked over them laughing. So, but it was great they were laughing. So
yeah, for sure. Well, and it strikes me that this process on sort of the micro level during the 5 minutes of a set or whatever, and on the macro level as you're developing new jokes, you're like really feedback oriented, right? Like you rely a lot on other people's feedback. And I think that's so interesting because a lot of other scary things that people do, they are like trying to avoid the feedback, or they may say, no, I don't need to get distracted with the feedback. But this particular thing, like, you're relying heavily on feedback, and yet you have to keep a really clear sense of like yourself and your confidence and why you're doing this. So what's it like to rely so much on feedback, and how do you keep that healthy?
I think just having a stance, I'm not going to get offended. Like, you can't blame me for having a go. I'm not claiming I'm a professional stand-up comedian. I haven't been doing this for 10 years. I'm just having a go. And I think that frees me up to not act like an expert and to openly admit, like, oh, that bombed. Like, I thought it was going to be so funny when I talked about my boobs, but it wasn't right here. Like, and then my friends will be like, if you talked about it more towards like the beginning or end of your set, it would be hilarious. And then I'll try that. And then sometimes like that just kills. Like, there was one night where, someone had called me and they were like, hey, someone's sick. Come and do stand-up at Meehan's, which is an Irish pub. I was like, okay, cool. And I didn't really have anything new prepared. So I did a set that I had done before. And there was a bachelorette party. And I mean, the girls were rolling. So I was like, okay, like, these jokes aren't terrible. They just weren't in front of the people that are going to get it. Like, I talk about Lululemon, like, leggings. And I mean, it's
not
a Target. Yes.
What that is.
Right. I talk about, like, moving your boobs while you're asleep because they're like not fully under you. Like, that's one of my favorite jokes, and boys hate it.
So all the guys are like,
they're
what?
like, yeah. Like, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night because like your fat is pulled in a weird direction? Everyone's just like, what are you talking about? And then I'll be like, you're laying on your side and then you roll over on your stomach and your boobs are like slightly left of center. So you have to like cup and carry them over so that way you're like fully under them. Guys are just like, no. And all the girls are just like, oh my gosh, that happens. Yes.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, boobs are real. But yeah, it really killed with one audience and didn't with the next.
Well, and it sounds like you commonly experience kind of the front row of scowling dudes. So like it or hate it, on this comedy scene, like, they're usually there. Yeah. I would love to ask you about that, like what it's like to be a woman in that scene.
Yeah. Are there a lot of female comics, would you say?
We're gaining more number every day.
This is actually a recruitment video.
I encourage females to do comedy all the time. I'm like, you're funny. You should do this. Let me sign you up.
Yeah.
But I do think it is a boys' club from my experience. It is very intimidating showing up early to a venue, and most venues have different setups for how to sign up and how to get on a set list. And a lot of venues in Atlanta have you show up early, you sign up. Some are really crazy. You have to like call at 4:59 on a Thursday, this one number, and leave a voicemail. And then if you're the top 15, then you get put on the roster. And then when you show up, like you sign up and then they put your name in a bag and then you draw. And it's a very intricate way of going about it, which I didn't realize. I actually had a friend of mine who helped me get in the scene, which is why I'm able to do what I do today. And he does comedy as well. Andrew Stanley, he was like one guy that I was like, oh, he's not afraid of me coming on his turf or like being on his turf. And he really empowered me and was like, hey, look at these tumblers. Is that what it's called?
Tumblr?
Yeah, like the website,
like the old school
like
blogs.
The blogs, yes.
Yeah.
Like look at this.
Tumblr's still a thing.
Call this number and email this person and call this person, and so having a guy be like, hey, let me help you out was a first, because I did experience so much pushback initially, especially because I just felt like. And this is just from my experience, but I felt like I was going up, trying to network, trying to build rapport with other comedians at the shows early, and guys were just getting the wrong idea immediately, and they were kind of one of two ways. They were like, oh, okay, you want to do comedy? Like, all right, like, you got to wait your turn. Or it was like, oh, you want to do comedy? Like, what's your name? Where do you live? Like, what's your social security I like number? That shirt on you. Yeah, so it was very much like either or. Yeah, it's very weird. But I just had to tell myself, like, and I even would tell them, I'm like, hey, like, this is what I want to do. I'd love to be a part of this. And I could tell pretty much immediately whether someone was for me doing it or kind of more reserved. And even with the females, I felt like there was a bit of, you're on my turf. I don't want you to tell my jokes. I don't want you to like, and you're fighting for spots. I'm not really fighting for spots because I'm like, oh, you want it? Okay, go. Like, I'll just sit back and watch. But people have been doing it, like, now being in it for almost 6 months in Atlanta, I feel like I see the same faces. We do all the same hits. There's something every night of the week, and these people are hitting up each club. And there's an online set list for different venues that have different times, and it's all about networking and who you know, and those are the people that roster.
Yeah.
And so it is very important to like put your foot in the door and just not be afraid to like, I'm not afraid to meet a new person. So I was just going up to people and being like, oh, I'm here an hour early. You must be a stand-up. So like, I'm Haylie. Like, hey, what's your name? Yeah. And it's an interesting culture to step into and kind of try to navigate, especially feeling like, oh, okay, they're not used to bold women off the platform. They're used to it on the platform. But for me, like, hey, what's up? My name is Haylie. I am from Atlanta, and I'm trying to do stand-up. I just felt the pushback a little bit.
It sounds like they eat newbies for breakfast anyway. But it
they
probably,
love to.
Yeah.
They call us the sacrificial lambs before we come up on stage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, then.
That is painful.
Yeah.
Well, that's another question I have, just based on our experience. We went and got to see you at one show, and it was hilarious. You were hilarious.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will say,
So sweet.
not everyone was hilarious.
That's true. We didn't love everyone.
No, we did not. But you were hilarious. But you know, I wonder how often there are people who are kind of one show wonders who come and do something and then you never see them again. And what it's like to see people cycle through, as I assume they must.
I feel like even the people that I thought, oh, this is their first time, or they even said, oh, this is their first go, they're regulars, which I was surprised by, but also I think that it is like self-awareness and, again, talking to your friends. Because I think some people, like, had a guy come up on stage and he was just like, I'm doing this for therapy and my therapist told me I should do this. And I was like, homeboy does not know how to hold a mic. Like, I don't know if this is his first time, but now I see him on the regular. And so I'm like, okay, like, this is his whole persona, what he's trying to do. And so
he's not even in therapy.
He lied. Most of them, like, their jokes are like catered towards who they're going to talk to. They're not true.
Yeah.
But yes, it's interesting to kind of see, you know, oh, you thought they were one-hit wonders, but here they are every week.
That is really interesting.
So, yeah, totally.
What you're saying is reminding me a lot of something we've talked about with, we did an inclusivity episode, and it is about that feeling of, am I allowed to join this club? Mm-hmm. When am I allowed? Because I know that if I go, people are going to give me that look, or they're going to make me feel like I'm not welcome. Mm-hmm. How do you push past that and give yourself permission in those moments?
I give myself full permission always anyways, because people are going to have different things go on inside of them, and I try to be proactive versus like reading a room and coming into it like, oh, because if this is my personal stance on any room, not just like with comedy, but when I was in a teaching position, or when I was, you know, a flight attendant or whatever, like, we come in with full authority, fully loved, fully accepted, fully like ready and raring to go. And whether people know it or not, it is their job to love me. It is my job to love them. And I come into a room just like, you don't know yet, but I love you and you're going to love me. And even if you don't, I'm just gonna do my darndest to let you know that I love you. Because ultimately, like, no matter how much you don't like me, that's on you. It's your responsibility to take care of you, and it's my responsibility to take care of me. And nothing you say or do can affect me. Like, you can't make me happy, you can't make me sad. So when I come into the comedy scene, I am just like a boom, hi, how are you? What's up? Like, I loved your last set. Like, great job. You know, I'm not afraid to just fully be there and to be present. And I'm already big and I got red hair and I'm very white. So I'm just like, when I walk into a room, I'm like, this is me, take it or leave it. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. I'm okay. My reputation's not going to be held by anyone's hands here. So that's kind of my stance consistently. And I learned that from college, through going to counseling, through being in church. And ultimately, I think it serves me to this day to just have that mindset of, you know what, like, at the end of the day, I'm not doing this for you. And if you don't love me or you don't like what I'm doing, that's okay. Talk to me about it. I'm not afraid of having a hard conversation. But I am here and I'm doing it, and I'm not even gonna be afraid of what you're thinking. Ultimately, like,
I think I'm gonna cry. No, it's beautiful.
It really is. You have, especially with stand-up, because there's so much room and there's so many opportunities to read into what other people think, and I think that is crippling, not only in your mindset, but ultimately in what you're trying to do and what you're passionate about doing. And I think life is short, just run with it. So that is how I feel.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's so cool. I want some of that.
Yeah, for sure.
You have that.
Spread it around.
You both have that.
I can have it if I try really hard.
Well, yeah, I think it's a hard one orientation to the world, you know? Like, you came by that with a lot of hard work and insight, it sounds like. And what's cool is that means that we all can have that too. You know, there's a way to adopt that, and that's powerful.
Absolutely. And telling yourself, like, I speak to myself before I go out, and I'm like, I have nothing to prove. I have nothing to show. God holds my reputation. I have no one to fear here. Like, no one's gonna, you know, come out of nowhere and make me a thing. Like, if anyone gives me a platform, I believe it's God. And so I ultimately am not afraid. And, you know, people will give feedback. And I have had people in stand-up who've been doing it a long time give me feedback, and I always hear them out and am so thankful for their feedback. But I've had so many guys be like, oh, you should tell dick jokes. I'm like, yeah, that's not really my thing. And they're like, but it would be, you know, most women in comedy do that. And I'm like, I realize that. I'm not here to do that. And I think that it's one thing where, like, you just know when to listen and when to, like, bow out of, like, a thought someone's trying to give. So I think that it helps you in discerning too, because you're not like, oh, he knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this for like 20 years. Like, oh, I'm going to buy into everything he's saying because he must know more than me. At that point, I'm just like, this is who I am, and you clearly don't know that yet, but you will.
Yeah.
So,
well, and he's still clearly just a person with an opinion.
Right.
And maybe that's informed by some experience, but there's still, I mean, everyone still has their own perspective. Everyone still has their own bias. And you don't have to take in and integrate what they say. If it doesn't fit you, like, it sounds like you're looking for a good fit, you know? And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and what you're saying strikes me as, you know, it's obvious that you have a very strong sense of identity and who you are. And I think that is probably, if we're talking about doing anything scary, you know, pursuing anything hard, I think that is a very crucial aspect to start from, you know, because like you said, they could hate me. I'm still going to be me. And I'm still the same person whether they hate me or not. Like that's a hard one for the people pleasers of the world. And I'm raising my hand. So that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I feel like I've said this 1 million times, but I feel like our sense of identity is so crucial and so core to the way that we interface with the world. And there's something so special about comedy and humor because there's like this sense of intimacy you can have with strangers that you can't really access other ways. And I think that's just fascinating. And I can't help but see the connection, like, of that strong sense of identity that you're just talking about, that you really know who you are. And as like an audience member, they really know who they are. And it's like, from that point, that intimacy moment can happen. You know, if we're not clear about who we are and who we are in relation to each other, intimacy is really blurry. And so I think that all the best comedy are like, you know, when it's you're so knowing, people are laughing because it's so relatable and you just like pulled the words out of their mind, out of their experience. Like, that's an experience of intimacy. And I think that's really special and really like lacking in our society. I think that's part of why people are so drawn to comedy. You know?
I think so.
It's fascinating.
I think comedy for a long time has just triggered people's emotions because they say what other people are feeling and they say it so boldly and just plainly that it is like, oh, someone said it, thank goodness, and I can repost this. And I know I've felt that way about certain comedians, and also just without reservation. I think that's the main thing, like the fearlessness of it, because there are things that even this past Monday, I was at a club and I was listening to the comedians before, and I was just like, oh man, this girl is just like ripping. She is saying things that we have all thought, and she was just running with it. And I mean, there was like a standing ovation. I was like, this girl deserves it because she like stepped up and really put herself out there to, I don't know, for ridicule or for whatever, but she really put herself out there, not afraid of that. And that's kind of what I would love to be ultimately.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the definition of vulnerability, right? Like being honest with the opportunity to be ridiculed.
Yes. Oh, yes.
like so much about comedy. It's like, you know, everything that people are gonna think or everything people are gonna take from you is in a 5-minute kind of like face value, whatever I'm throwing at you. But then there's so much depth like behind it, behind why you're doing it. It's interesting that this is an area that has actually such a wide range of depth. Like the way that people kind of interface with comedy is on the surface seemingly, but there's all this underpinning that's so important and so really just so deep, you know, it's profound stuff. It's just fascinating, you know?
These comedians that I've worked with before, they think about their set day and night. And I mean, they're backstage just like pacing and just like looking over notes and just re-listening to voice clips. And I know that people are working with nerves, people are working with so many different things, but ultimately it is an interesting platform to have where you are just bringing people in with your words, and you're provoking a response, and not just like we've all listened to a joke and laughed internally like, oh, that was funny, but like not that funny, but like funny, and like but to provoke like a outward response where someone feels freed up to like just let it go, that is something that is very hard to do, and it requires so much thinking. Like even when I'm writing a bit or something, I mean, there are so many things with flight attendant work that I want to bring in, but I'm like, oh, it sounds too much like complaining, or oh, it sounds too much like this or that, and it's just not going to hit well. I need to find the right wording for how to, you know, get it. And the best comedians are the ones who have, it sounds so effortless, and they just, you know, boom, 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 punchline, boom, 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 punchline, and you're just rolling the whole time. And I'm like, that person worked so hard on this set. Yeah. And the people that I hear do the same set again, like I've heard some people do the same set like 20 times, and I'm like, that time hit, like really, really hit, and I was rolling. But I've heard it before, and I was just like, timing or for whatever else, right? You know, it just didn't hit. But this time it killed. So yeah, it is an art form, I think, more than I ever thought. I liked watching comedy, but I never really thought about everything that goes into it.
Sure. So, yeah. I think that's so easy to forget as a consumer, as someone in the audience, someone watching on Netflix, you know, whether it's comedy or music or whatever. It's so easy to not think about they've probably dedicated a large amount of their life to this craft. But it also reminded me when you said that about the jokes, you know, not hitting, and then you heard it again and they did, like, let's talk about that courage to, okay, maybe it bombed and you still went out and did it again. Yeah. Like, that's so brave.
Yeah. Like, let me try it 20 more times and figure out how to make it hit. Right. That's interesting. Definitely. Yeah. Yes. It sounds a lot like no overnight successes, too. Which is something we say all the time. Yeah. Even as effortless as it sounds or seems to you in the audience, like, yes, like 99.9% of the time, at least, it's not, you know? Right. It's not how it happens.
So with it being such hard work, what has it added to your life, would you say, or has it added anything?
I think it's been this amazing creative outlet. It's allowed me to voice some things that I otherwise wouldn't voice, and to really think about what's going on in the world, why do we feel this way, and really evaluate, you know, is this just how I feel, or is this how other people feel as well? And just starting a conversation has empowered me to, I'm going to write about this because this is relevant and I think this needs to be said. And I'll say things about women, particularly because I'm a woman and because there aren't many women that are like, you know,
saying it.
Yes. And saying it in a way that's not losing the guys as well, because I never want to talk to one group so specifically that I lose everyone. Absolutely. I want it to be inclusive. I want it to hit home with people, and I also want it to challenge thinking, because I think that humor has for a long time been self-deprecating, which I think I'd like to make fun of myself more than other people. Like that's my stance. Like if I'm going to do a comedy routine and you'll hear me talk like bad about myself, I always, like, my friends and family know, like, I don't actually think that about myself. I just don't want to make fun of anyone else, and I can pick on myself and not feel anything from that.
You can take it.
Yeah. So I can take it from myself. Right. But I certainly, and comedy has been, just ripping people and picking an audience member and ripping them, or, taking, a concept and just being like, this is, the BS of it. And for me, it's really hard. And there are core like comedians that I listen to. I love Jim Gaffigan, Angelina Johnson, and like these people that do clean comedy, but it's genuinely funny. And they have to work twice as hard to think about, how can I get the point across and show them that this is the humor in it without losing them because of offense, because people are so quick to get offended and so quick to just flip off because they're like, I clearly disagree with what this person's political views are, so I'm not going to listen anymore. But to be inclusive on that level, that's where I would love to try to be. And it's very hard writing jokes like that include people. And I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I think you did.
I don't 100% remember what it is.
Well,
What has it added to your life?
Oh, yeah. It's added so much. Just the freedom to have that creative outlet. And my family and friends have come, and it's just been so fun inviting them into the conversation. And do you think this is funny? Does this work? And it never works when you're telling someone about a joke. So I feel like with my family, I'm constantly telling them jokes, and they'll be super honest. They're like, that was shite. But yeah, I think it's fun. You invite people into it, and people like to be involved in creative things like that.
I think people like to laugh too.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I like to laugh.
Faux show.
I do as well.
I think it's really cool and really interesting that you do try to keep it really clean, just because, like you even said or alluded to this earlier, that there are a lot of times where it would be hilarious to just be able to drop whatever into it.
Oh, yes.
But like, yeah, right? I mean, that's,
like, this would be so funny in this moment.
Yeah, like, exactly. But it's like, not only are you rolling up on this new scene, like relatively new scene, and you're up for the challenge, but you're also like not picking the low-hanging fruit for your jokes, which I think is very commendable. Like no matter how you feel about, how explicit content is of something, like I think it's really cool that you're like not just going to pick the most accessible things. You're going to have to kind of work a little extra hard to make sure that it's just as funny.
Right.
And that's really cool. I think most people don't do that. I think for most people it'd be enough to just show up and take the challenge at all. Mm-hmm. So
definitely. Yeah. If I can get people to laugh, I don't care what I say,
I think a lot of comedians feel that way, and I personally feel like it limits them, and it will limit them, because even if I'm laughing at someone, if they're dropping the F-bomb every other word, I'm like, this will limit you in the long run. Like, and as funny as it is right now, like, I that's my personal opinion, and that's kind of my takeaway from it. But I mean, there are famous comedians who do just cuss the whole time or whatever, and I have no problem with cussing ultimately. Yeah. But I do think, like, when you have a platform, you need to, like, just value it and honor the opportunity, and just really make sure that what you're saying isn't pumping out just trash in the atmosphere, or, just trash in people's minds. Yeah. Because I'd hate to say something that, like, triggers someone to, go into a dark place. Yeah. And a lot of comedians do dark humor, and that's fine. And I'll laugh at it sometimes. But at the end of the day, I want to free people up and have them walking away, like, lighter than they were before. I don't want them to come and, like, oh yeah, she was all right. Like,
that's true.
Again, like, that's you. And that's, like, that idea that there's room for everybody. Like, these are things that you feel really strongly about that fit you. That's you, and that's your particular calling to this, you know? And I think that's really cool that you can still have room and respect for other people who see it differently. But, you know, ultimately, it's a greater degree of creativity for you, and it's a better quality output for your audience.
Definitely.
It's really cool.
Oh, yeah. And to be in front of this audience, like, I don't take it lightly because I'm like, they're, you know, coming to church, you're in front of a particular audience. Doing it in a group of people where most of them would claim to be atheist and, you know, claim to be whatever, believe whatever. I think it's like an incredible opportunity to just come and share like a little bit of like, hey, like this is, this is what I believe freedom looks like, and this is what I came to like, and I hope that people feel that or can laugh without, you know, without any judgment or any, you know, I just ultimately want them to be freed up and to feel like, oh, okay, something's different. I want them to feel like something's different about her, and not just because of my jokes, but just even my presence. I want them to feel that. And I do feel that in like the green room or like beforehand, because I'll be like, hey, what's up? How are you? And they're like listening like, and I'm like, you're going to do great. Don't even stress. Like, it's going to be awesome. Like, can I get you anything? You need a water? Like, I just love those opportunities. And I've been to a couple house shows with comedians where it's just all comedians, and that's an amazing opportunity to be invited into that and to also have that platform just to talk openly. And we're doing the same thing, but we're looking at it in completely different ways, and just little opportunities to make like good friends is really important to me there. So it's an exciting opportunity, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like a lot of people on the scene, like the tendency, I mean, anytime you're doing something vulnerable, the tendency is to isolate yourself. And I think it's really amazing and probably to their benefit, and they don't even know it, that here you are showing up with intention to like be the light and to make connections and to build people up. You know, most people I would think don't enter the scene with that on their list of what they're there for, you know? So that's really cool.
The first time I was there, it felt so like you're on my turf. Who are you? Like, it's just like a room of like, it was 30 people, 30 comedians all in this back room, like drinking, doing whatever. And I was just like, hey, I don't know you yet. I'm Haylie. Like, hi. And I could immediately tell that they were not used to that, period. And some people were like, I'm doing my thing, like, please leave me alone. And I could tell that and just read easily, so that way just move on, like, hey. But then there were people that were like, oh, you're new, like, tell me about yourself. And I was like, well, tell me about yourself, like, what do you like to do? And and so I think I know that just coming into that, I was like, this is different. And they're all showing me that with their faces. Like, they're not used to someone just like, what's up? This is so cool. My mom and dad are out there. Like, you know, they're not used to that. So I thought it was like, if nothing else, this is a good, like, at least I'm friendly.
Man, just that alone is like such a stark contrast for people.
I love it. So encouraging. Where do you see yourself down the road? How do you see this interweaving with the other parts of your life?
I feel like comedy is something that I will continue to do without a platform or with a platform, whatever. But ultimately, I am working towards, I love to make goals, and I'm hoping to, I've never been on a weekend show before, so I would love to make a Friday night or a Saturday night special or something like that. So it's simple, attainable goals for me right now is just becoming a regular, making sure that they see my face consistently, and that the people at different venues know that I respect their venue and respect what they do, and also that the other comedians feel support from me in whatever way, shape, or form. And I created a whole different Instagram account for different various reasons, but I created it so that way I can just consistently like post about other comedians and like just, you know, encourage them and show up at their shows when I'm not performing or not doing anything, and just being present and consistently like, hey, that was awesome set, or, you know, not BSing people, but really genuinely being like, hey, I loved when you talked about this part, or, you know, I'd love to get together with you. We should grab coffee with some of the girls, and I'm going to take this course. And I met one of the girls this past week, and she and I were chatting in the bathroom, and just like little moments anywhere I can. I'm just like, I ultimately want this to not only like go somewhere, like if it doesn't go somewhere, like I'm not going to be crushed. I'm not like banking on becoming a comedian or anything, but I do think while I'm there, and while I have this opportunity, and while I have this passion for doing it, I should do it with everything. So I just am, I'm excited for what the future could look like, or, you know, just the friendships that I've built and hopefully will continue to build. And also the freedom in speech. Like, I think that is something where comedy does it, and does it well. Like, SNL has never stopped being controversial. And I don't mean that there are some things that shouldn't be said, because there are. But I mean, like, the creative expression to make fun of everyone across the board, or like the freedom to say things that are not otherwise said. I love that, and I hope that like that just rolls over into other areas of life where I can just like tell the truth without fear of condemnation or fear of reputation. I think is the big thing. I tell myself all the time, God holds my reputation. It doesn't matter what this person thinks of me. I'm going to be as gracious and as kind as I can. But at the end of the day, if they write me off, that's on them. If they don't agree with me, that's fine. We can disagree. So just keeping that mindset, I think it keeps me soft. And that's kind of, I want to stay flexible and stay open and stay, you know, vulnerable with that. I think comedy does that well.
I think you do that well.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I just want to insert a mic drop. What does that sound like? Let's just add it.
Hey.
Andy keeps giving me all this sound effect homework to do all the time.
We're going to add chickens crossing the road.
Yeah. You just don't get it. That's awesome.
Oh, no.
So, what would you say to somebody who is considering or in the middle of doing something vulnerable and scary? What kind of advice might you give them?
Do it. Just do it. Yes, I think, you know what? You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to prove to anyone. You have only more freedom to step into, only more to just take on in life, enlarge your tent, grow as a person. And the quicker you are to, like, I waited till I was 30 to really step out in comedy. I've stepped out in other areas that felt like huge steps. And I think if I hadn't done those before, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. And if I hadn't gone through some hurt and some real moments with God and just with counselor and with myself, where I was like, hey, like, I am looking to the world or to people or to these people in particular to tell me I'm doing okay, or to tell me I'm good at singing or good at skating or whatever I'm doing in the moment. I feel like the quicker you are to put other voices aside and ultimately just say, this is something I'm passionate about doing, this is something I want to do, and this is something I'm just gonna sign up for before I'm even ready and throw myself in. And the best mentors I've had always did that to me. They always were like, hey, do you want to sing at this conference thing? And I was like, no. And they were like, well, too bad, you're already there. Like, you're doing it. And I feel like those people released me and empowered me and stretched me in a way that, like, I want to do that for other people. And if anyone wants to do something creative, I say run with it, because life is really short and you don't know when your time is up. It's smoke in the wind, and you just gotta just really run with it. And I think the biggest shame would be to come, you know, later in life and realize that you wasted so much time worrying about what other people think or comparing yourself. Like, I think that I talk to more and more people where they're just comparing themselves to other people. And to me, when I was in college, I just really had this deep-rooted revelation of like, no one is thinking like I'm thinking. I don't know if that has something to do with dyslexia or anything, but I just had this real deep-rooted revelation of like, no one's going to get what I'm getting. No one has seen what the Holy Spirit has shown me. No one is going to understand. I'm going to be so misunderstood. I'm going to be so overlooked or underestimated, or I'm going to be so, just out there. But I have to be okay with that, because if not, then it won't serve me in this life. It will really just be bowing down to like this doubt and this regret. And there's only one person who comes in to like rob you from what you ultimately want to do. And I think about that all the time. I say out loud in my car all the time, like, you're not going to rob me. Like, I will step into this. I will do this. Even if I mess up, like, it's okay. Better tomorrow. Like, and I think about that all the time. And again, the best mentors and leaders are the ones who are like, I'm gonna let you have a go. Oh my gosh, you bombed it. Come back. Let's practice. Let's work on something. Let me train you. Let me grow you. Let me stretch you. And I think that it just empowers you to have a go again, like a million times. And the people that you see doing amazing things, they failed so many times off screen or off the mic or anything like that. And yeah, you just give yourself permission to mess up. Give yourself permission to have a go again and again and again. And people aren't going to get it. And you get it. So you just tell yourself, I can do this. I got this. And just go. Just do it.
I love it.
It's such a positive perspective of the idea that people are never going to understand you. Like, there's nobody like you. And therefore, no one will understand you the way that you do. And that's where your confidence comes from. But I love that, because it's permission to kind of tune it out.
Right. Oh, you need to. Even the most supportive people, most supportive people in my life, they've been so encouraging. They're so on board with me. They're so for me. Even when I'm against myself, they're so for me. I've shared like an idea or a thought or a dream with them, and they've been like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work. And I'm like, I can already see it.
Yeah.
So if I can already see it, I know that God can do it, because my mind is already very limited. So I'm like, if I can see it, I know it can happen. And I always felt that way. Like, that's when the most breakthrough comes in my life. That's when I step into things that I never dreamt.
To me, it does not make logical sense that we're always trying to compare. And we're saying like, oh, like you sing, who do you sound like? You know, it's like, there's already one of those.
Right.
Why would I strive to be just like someone else?
Yes.
It would behoove me to be different,
right,
and to offer the world something different. And so I think to all those listening who, like you said, have just always felt a little different or like not sure where you fit in, that's your superpower. It really, really is. Like, that is how you do it. You be different, you know, and just go for it.
Yes.
I love that. And I can confidently say, because I know you, that you're so good at including people. And it has definitely meant a lot to me.
That's so sweet. That's like the best encouragement, because that's what I want to do. I spend a lot of time feeling on the fringes, and if anything, I'm like, inclusivity anywhere I go.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you won't let these people in? I'm gonna bring these people in myself. Like, myself. Yeah. Like, oh, you have a problem with this? Boom. I'm not afraid with reprimand. Like, I'm not afraid of someone having a hard word.
Yeah.
And I would rather them have a hard word with me and then me ask questions like, but why? Why do you feel like they can't be there in the green room? Why do you feel this way? Because then you get into the core of like the why behind the what. And a lot of times the why behind the what isn't there. And that's when it's like, that's a wrong way of thinking. It's an unhealthy way of like doing things, and ultimately it's going to cripple you. So it's not, but I'm not afraid. And I never, after college, I was like, I'm not afraid of reprimand. You come and you bring whatever, and I will bow down. Like, I'll apologize. I won't do that again if it's overstepped in line and you have the right why behind the what. But if not, I'm just like, Oh, you have a problem? Here, bring home my friends. Oh, you only wanted 2 people there? Okay, well,
Sorry.
I brought 5 because they felt like they couldn't be here, and here they are.
Yeah.
And I think
Everybody's
that's more
allowed.
important. Yes.
Everybody's valid. Everybody's allowed to be themselves.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You give yourself permission
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do something. And people read into like gray area rules. Like, oh, is it okay to do this? I don't know. Like, so-and-so said one time. I'm like, no, that's not a thing. Like, if someone didn't say, hey, don't do this, it's not a rule.
Right.
Like, don't buy into walking on eggshells if someone didn't lay out eggshells for you to walk on. That's kind of my, like, but really, that's how I feel and how I've always felt.
Mic drop.
But that is how
Yeah.
I feel.
Well,
So,
and like if it is a problem, well, then the hard word is the open door, and then it will be clear.
yes.
So
Oh, yes.
I love that. There's clarity.
There should be. No, thank you guys so much for.
Thank you.
This is gonna be a pain in the butt.
No.
We're just rolling it out just like it is.
I freaking love it.
There's going to be some inspired people driving down the road.
Who are probably going to want to find you. Where can people find you?
I have a phone number.
She lives out.
What's your social security
Oh my
number?
gosh, I don't even know that. If there are any comedians out there who want to do comedy and you live in Atlanta, reach out to me because I would love to hook you up. I would love to help you sign up for a open mic night. I would love to help you get involved and get plugged in. I would have loved someone to do that for me, so I would love to do that for anyone. And you can reach out to me through email or my Instagram. It's a new Instagram, but it's Hey, Hay, Bae, BAE _ in THEA. Yay.
Hey, baby.
Hey, Bae in the A. That's really
I love it. We'll also put that in the show notes in case you didn't catch that spelling.
Thank you.
I love it. It's very clever. That should just be your stage name.
it should be.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all are so sweet.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have a second, head over to Spotify to listen to our brand new playlist called Friends and Faves. Check out our show notes for that and other helpful info. See you next week.
Maybe say that over because I laughed a little bit.
Hello. Hello, my name is Haylie.
Are you ever so tickled by your own joke that you're like, oh my god, I can't stop laughing? Because I feel like I've done that.
That's a great question.
I am in front of my cousins or in front of my brothers, and they're just like, it wasn't that funny.
You're like, it was.
I'm like, it was hilarious.
But
You
it
just
was.
don't know.